Number 2, baby. If I have a set of values, but I don't spend my time acting upon these values, can I really call them values? Value. A person's principles or standards of behavior, one's judgment of what is important in life. If we deem this question acceptable, then the answer to my previous question is yes. Based off the latter half of the definition, I can still judge these to be my values, even if I haven't kept up with them recently. However, at some point, if you continue not to act on these so-called values, then you'll have to come to the conclusion that they are no longer your values. They used to be your values, and you've changed into a new person with new values, and you need to do some re-examining of your new life. There is nothing wrong with this, but if you are in a similar position to where I was, then you might consider pausing and taking stock of what is happening around you, and putting in a concerted effort into figuring out for yourself whether you hold these values actually dear, and whether they are necessary at all. I made a list in early 2023 of the things that I decided I valued. I wouldn't necessarily call these my values, but there were clear things that I decided were going to be a major part of my life for the days, months, and years to come. Working out, diet, smoking cessation, finance, budget, social life, music creation, podcast, jewelry, reading, video editing, photography, long-term planning, marketing. All of these items I wanted to be my new life, and in many ways I still do. But as I inevitably found out, these were unrealistic. I still hold my day job, which takes up anywhere from 10 to 12 hours every 5 days of the week. So doing everything on the list to the degree that I wanted wasn't going to happen, no matter how much I suffered through it. Eventually I had to make sacrifices, except I did it in an unhealthy way where I wasn't trying to make sacrifices, so I did what I could while agonizing over what I couldn't. Unhealthy as it was, this guided me, and a natural plan eventually started to emerge from within the list. I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to make money online, and I knew my skills, which was music, and to a much lesser extent woodworking, and I knew which skills I needed, which was video editing and marketing. And what, at the time that I wrote this list, I lacked most were funds. I was living an unsustainable lifestyle and getting paid just barely enough to keep it. So what flew out the window of too much to handle first? Well, for one, long-term planning. I had a long-term plan, but that was kind of it. I hadn't put much thought into it aside from an initial goal. 2, music creation died down. I barely only worked on songs that had already been started, and I didn't make anything new for the time period later. 3, smoking. We're not involved in this period of my life, as I am a man with many coping mechanisms, and the list goes on. My diet died. I tried to budget briefly, but that turned into an obsession with trying to make money fast, which eventually leads me to what I actually had time for. Jewelry. I thought that if I could get my jewelry making business off the ground, it would have been the quickest and easiest way to make money. So I spent my free hours carving and sanding. I found a marketing class online, and I started to begin how to video edit. And lastly, my social life at this point was flourishing, although in hindsight, most of those relationships were pretty toxic and mutually destructive. This went on until I started having worries of carpal tunnel syndrome, and my health increasingly became a concern. I stopped making jewelry. I started working out and focusing on my diet. The marketing courses I was taking at the time were sneakily just an ad to create your own blog and use the services of the Bourse Creator, which I guess is what I get for taking a free course online, but it also kind of convinced me to make a blog. And that just adds another thing to the list of the things I was trying to do. Score one HubSpot. I didn't pay them shit though, so I'd say we're tied. My agonizing over not being able to do everything continued, and I just started to do less and less and less until I was doing barely anything at all. I would come home, work, smoke, J.O., smoke, make food, smoke, go to bed. After that became routine for a while, I started to wonder if I even wanted to do the things on my list anymore. I was questioning my own motivations, because if I couldn't find the will to do the things that I've been saying that I've wanted to do to so many people for so long now, then what? I've always been somewhat of a realist, but I've never put much effort into turning that gaze inwards. And it wasn't until I clearly mapped out what it might take to realistically get me out of this hole that any progress was made. When I realized I could pay off all my debts in just 4 years, I was ecstatic. When I gave myself 2 months to read a book and quit smoking, I had hope. When I heard most YouTubers say that it took 2 to 3 years for them to build their following and I was allowing myself 5 years, I felt confident. When I mapped out everything that it would take to finish my EP that had already taken 3 years, I felt relief. Nothing had actually happened yet, but by simply thinking about these things over a given period of time, naming them, quantifying them, qualifying them, and writing it all down, I had found the motivation that I needed. Does this mean that everything will work out exactly as I planned? Probably not. Does this mean that I won't have bad days, months, seasons? Probably not. But I've learned new information about myself that I can use to my advantage in the future. So, if you realize that you value something and you are not and have not been doing it, slow down everything. Take a break, write it all out. What aren't you doing? Why might you not be doing it? How would you do it? What would make it easier to do? Why would you do it? Why do you even want to do it? Make a plan. Be reasonable and realistic. Nothing happens overnight. A new mindset that isn't drug-induced will take a long time to become you. I'll leave you with 2 quotes that in the recent weeks have been very useful to me. If you haven't planned to fail this year, you probably aren't aiming high enough. Banish procrastination. If you wait more than a week to get an idea done, abandon it.